He had it all: money, power, and a family name. But Adisa chose the streets. Now his life is falling apart. The police are after him, his mother is desperate, and a mysterious nurse steps in to save him. But can she really change him? Or is it too late? From dangerous deals to a fight for survival, this is a story you won't want to miss. Grab your popcorn and join us as we explore Adisa's journey through love, loss, and the hope of a new beginning. Will he make it out alive? Let's find out. Once upon a time, in a vast and bustling city, there lived a boy named Adisa, a boy who carried a heart broken beyond repair. He was the second son of Madame Abani, a rich and powerful woman. His older brother, Tunde, had been everything a mother could wish for: smart, hardworking, and full of promise. But after Tunde's tragic death, something in Adisa shattered. The boy who once laughed easily now carried silence like armor. Madame Abani tried to pull him close, but he slipped through her fingers like smoke. The more she reached for him, the further he drifted. Adisa found comfort in the streets, in the company of people his mother warned him about, boys with sharp eyes and careless hearts, whose lives unraveled in the corners of Legos, far from the safety of home. He called it freedom. She called it destruction. "Adisa, this is not the life I raised you for," she would say, her voice trembling with worry. "Mama, I am fine," he would reply, his smile thin and brittle, like glass ready to break. But he wasn't fine. Day by day, he sank deeper into trouble. He stayed out long after the city dimmed, returning home only when the sun bled into the sky. He stopped listening to his mother's warnings, stopped caring about the future his brother had once dreamed of. The streets had become his refuge, and danger waited for him like an old friend, lurking around every corner. And somewhere, in the chaos of the city, fate watched and waited, ready to change Adisa's life forever. The evening was calm, too calm. Madame Abani sat in her living room, waiting. Adisa was not home yet. Again, Ejiro, the housekeeper, peeped at her from the kitchen, shaking her head. "Madam, you will only give yourself a heart attack because of that boy." Before Madame Abani could reply, a loud bang hit the gate, then sirens, then heavy boots stomping into the house. "Where is he? Where is Adisa?" a police officer shouted. Madame Abani's heart jumped. "What is going on? What has he done?" They didn't answer her. Instead, they moved fast, entering Adisa's room and dragging him out. He struggled, but they were stronger. "Move! Move!" they shouted as they forced him towards the door. Madame Abani ran after them, her voice breaking. What did he do this time? One officer turned, his face blank. Drugs, selling them. For a moment, silence. Then Madame Abani staggered back, gripping her chest. "No, not my son. Adisa, tell them it's a mistake." Adisa lowered his head. He didn't speak. He didn't fight. The officers shoved him into their van, slammed the door, and drove off into the night. Madame Abani stood frozen at the gate, watching the red lights disappear. Her heart was heavy, her mind spinning. She had warned him, begged him, even threatened him. But now reality had come crashing down like a heavy rain. Ejiro came to her side and whispered, "Madam, I won't lie to you. This boy is out of our control." Madame Abani closed her eyes. A storm was coming, and she didn't know if her son would survive it. The next morning, Madame Abani stormed into the police station, her expensive wrapper dragging on the dusty floor. The officers looked up, but said nothing. Everyone in Lagos knew her name. With a voice that shook the room, she shouted, "Where is my son?" A tired-looking officer sighed. "Madam, this is not a business matter. Your son is selling drugs. We caught him red-handed." "And so?" she fired back. "You think you can keep him here? He is coming home with me." Within minutes, Madame Abeni had pulled all the strings necessary to secure Adisa's release. When he walked out, head down, she grabbed his arm and dragged him outside. The ride home was silent, but the moment they entered the house, the storm hit. "With all I have done for you, this is how you repay me?" she shouted, her voice echoing through the large living room. "Adisa, do you know how many people beg to work for me? Do you know how many people pray to have just half of what you have? And yet you choose to disgrace me." Adisa sat on the couch, rubbing his temples. "Mama, I never asked for any of this." "Oh, so I should have left you to suffer?" she laughed. "Instead of using my name to build yourself, you're out there playing gangster? Tell me, what exactly are you looking for?" Adisa stood up, his eyes dark. "Everything you own is yours, Mama. I want to build my own life." Madame Abeni's chest tightened. "Build your own life by selling drugs? Adisa, is that the future you see for yourself?" He turned away, walking towards the stairs. "At least it's mine." Madame Abeni collapsed onto a chair, her hands trembling. "Oluwa, oh, this boy will kill me before my time." That night, Madame Abeni sat on the balcony, staring at the city lights. Ejiro walked up, shaking her head. "Madam, should I speak?" "Go ahead, Ejiro," she sighed. "This boy will not listen. You have tried. I don't know what else can change him." Madame Abeni turned to her, eyes sharp. "I know what to do." The next morning she called Ejiro into the sitting room. "From today, you are his shadow. Wherever he goes, you go. If he gets into trouble again, you lose your job." Ejiro's eyes widened. "Madam, this trouble is too big for me. This boy is like a fire that won't go out." "Then you better make sure he doesn't burn," Madame Abeni said, standing up. "Because if he falls again, you fall with him." Ejiro sighed and shook her head. "Madam, this boy is a problem that has no solution." "Then you better pray we find one before it's too late," Madame Abeni muttered, walking away. The night was quiet. Too quiet. Then the front door creaked open. Adisa staggered in, his white shirt stained with blood. He held his arm, pressing hard against the wound. His face was twisted in pain, but when he saw his mother standing in the hallway, his eyes turned cold. "Adisa!" Madame Abeni shouted, rushing to him. "What happened to you?" "It's nothing," Adisa mumbled, trying to hide his arm. Ejiro appeared from the kitchen, her hands on her head. "Blood! Madam! See blood!" Madame Abeni didn't wait. She grabbed Adisa's arm and forced him to sit. "Who did this to you?" "Mama, leave it," he grumbled. "It's nothing, just a small problem." "Small problem? You are bleeding like a goat that was cut," Ejiro exclaimed. Madame Abeni's hands trembled as she reached for her phone. "I'm calling the doctor." "Mama, I said I'm fine," Adisa snapped, pulling away. "You are not fine," she shouted back, "and you will not die in this house like a fool." Within minutes, the doctor sent a nurse. And that was how Annabelle entered their lives. The nurse walked in, a slim young woman with sharp eyes. She looked at Adisa, then at the wound. "You're lucky it's not deeper," she said, setting down her bag. Adisa eyed her with irritation. "I don't need a nurse." Annabelle ignored him and pulled out a bottle of antiseptic. If I don't clean this wound, it will get infected. Then let's see if you still act tough." Ijiro burst into laughter. "This one doesn't care about you, Adisa." Adisa frowned. "I said I'm fine. Don't touch me." Annabelle didn't move at all. "You want to fight me too? Go ahead, hit me. But this wound will still need treatment." Madame Abeni folded her arms. "Adisa, if you like, argue from now till tomorrow. This nurse is treating that wound, unless you want me to call police again to carry you." Adisa made a mean face but stretched out his arm. "Fine, do it fast." Annabelle smiled. "Good boy." She cleaned the wound, ignoring his winces. Then she picked up a syringe. "What's that?" Adisa asked, his eyes narrowing. "Injection," she said, filling the needle. Adisa pulled back. "No way, I hate injections." Ijiro clapped her hands. "A big man like you is afraid of a small needle?" Annabelle stepped closer. "Adisa, let me make this easy. Either you take the injection, or I hold you down and give it to you anyway." For the first time, Adisa looked at her with real surprise. Nobody ever spoke to him like that. Madame Abeni laughed. "Annabelle, I like you already. Give him the injection." Adisa groaned. "Fine, just do it quickly." As Annabelle pressed the needle into his arm, he clenched his teeth. When it was over, she packed her things and turned to Madame Abeni. "He will be fine," she said, "but he needs rest, and no running around." Madame Abeni nodded. "Thank you, my dear. You have done well." Annabelle turned to Adisa. "You can pretend to be strong all you want, but next time, be careful. The streets won't always let you come back home." Adisa watched her walk away. For the first time in a long while, he was at a loss for words. Madame Abeni saw how Annabelle handled her son. That evening she called her aside. "Move into my house. Watch him while I travel. I will pay you well." Annabelle hesitated. "Madam, I don't think your son will like that." "He doesn't have to like it," Madame Abeni said. "He just has to stay alive." Annabelle thought about her sick mother and the hospital bills piling up. She took a deep breath. "Okay, I'll do it." Days passed, and Adisa and Annabelle clashed every single day. She threw away his cigarettes. She poured out his alcohol. "Are you trying to kill yourself?" she shouted. "What am I living for?" Adisa fired back. Annabelle's voice softened. "Then find something to live for, because I see something in you worth saving." For the first time, Adisa had no reply. He just stared at her, as if searching for something he had lost a long time ago. Slowly, Adisa changed. He spent less time outside, more time talking to Annabelle. He liked how she stood up to him, how she didn't fear him. He had never met a girl like her before. One afternoon, they sat outside in the garden. Annabelle handed him a cup of tea. "Drink." Adisa smiled. "You think tea will change my life?" "Maybe not. But at least it will keep you warm," she replied. He took a sip, then stared at her. "Why do you care so much?" Annabelle sighed. "Because I see someone who wants to change, but doesn't know how." Adisa looked away. "Maybe I don't deserve change." Annabelle placed a hand on his. "Everyone deserves a second chance, even you." For the first time in years, Adisa felt something shift inside him. He wasn't sure what it was, but it scared him. That night, trouble knocked on Adisa's door, literally. A loud bang echoed through the house. Ijiro ran into the living room shouting, "Madam! Madam! Something has happened!" Adisa rushed to the door and yanked it open. A man stood there, his face cold and unforgiving. Otunba. "Long time, Adisa," Otunba said, stepping inside like he owned the place. Adisa's jaw tightened. "What do you want?" Otumba smiled. "Ah, are you asking me? You owe me money, a lot of money, and I don't like waiting." Adisa's hands clenched into fists. "I told you, I just need more time." "Time is up," Otumba said, snapping his fingers. "Since you can't pay, I have taken something more valuable." Adisa's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" Otumba smiled. "Your little nurse friend." Adisa's heart stopped. "Where is she?" "She's safe, for now. But if I don't get my money by tomorrow, she won't be." Adisa pounced at him. They shoved him back. "Calm down," Otumba said, laughing. "I'll send you the address. If you want her back, bring my money." And with that, they walked out, leaving Adisa breathing heavily, fists clenched, and heart pounding with fear and rage. Madame Abeni stepped into the room. "Adisa, what have you done?" "I have to get her back," Adisa muttered. No matter what, Adisa barely slept that night. Every second felt like fire in his chest. As soon as the sun rose, he made calls, searching for people who could help him find Annabelle. Madame Abeni watched him pace back and forth. "Adisa, you need a plan. You can't just run into danger." "I don't care," Adisa barked. "I'll pay. Just don't hurt her." Otumba's voice rang in his head, mocking him. "Let's see what you're willing to lose." Ijiro whispered from the corner. "Madam, this matter is serious. That man is no day joke." Adisa turned to his mother. "I need the money. I know you have it. Please, Mama. If you ever loved me, help me save her." Madame Abeni sighed heavily. "You think money is your biggest problem? That man wants more than money, Adisa. He wants control." "Then I'll give him whatever he wants," Adisa said, his voice firm. "As long as Annabelle comes home safe." With Madame Abeni's help, Adisa tracked down Otumba's hideout. It was an old warehouse by the waterside. The moment they arrived, Adisa saw Annabelle tied to a chair, her face bruised. Otumba stood beside her, smiling. "Ah, lover boy has come. Where is my money?" Adisa stepped forward. "Let her go first." Otumba laughed. "Are you negotiating?" "This is not a market, Adisa. Money first." Before Otumba could react, Madame Abeni's guards stormed in. Chaos followed. Fists flew, gunshots rang in the air, and in the middle of it all, Adisa fought like a man possessed. He punched, kicked, and grabbed Annabelle, shielding her from harm. Then pain. A knife slashed across Adisa's side. Annabelle screamed, "No!" Otumba saw the fight turning against him and fled. His men scattered. The moment the dust settled, Madame Abeni rushed to Adisa. "Get him to the hospital!" she shouted. That night, as Annabelle held his hand in the hospital, tears rolled down her cheeks. "You nearly died for me." Adisa managed a weak smile. "I told you, I'd do anything to get you back." Annabelle wiped her tears. "Why?" Adisa looked into her eyes. "Because I love you." Her heart pounded. "You love me?" He nodded. "I just didn't know it until I almost lost you." She leaned in and hugged him gently. "I love you too." For the first time in his life, Adisa felt peace. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Madame Abeni's office as she sat behind her large wooden desk, flipping through documents. The door creaked open, and she looked up to see Adisa standing there, his arms still bandaged, but his eyes clear. "Mama, teach me," he said. Madame Abeni raised a brow. "Teach you what?" Adisa stepped forward. "How to run the business, the right way." For a long moment she just stared at him. Then slowly a smile crept across her face. "Are you ready to listen? To do things the right way without shortcuts?" "I am." Adisa nodded firmly. "I don't want to live like before. I want to build something real." Madame Abeni stood up, walked over to him, and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then sit down. Your training starts now." For the first time in years, she saw not just her son, but a man determined to change. That evening, Adisa stepped onto the balcony where Annabel stood, staring at the Lagos skyline. The city lights flashed like stars, but all Adisa could see was her. "You're leaving soon, aren't you?" he asked. Annabel turned, her face unreadable. "My job here is done. You're healing, Adisa. You don't need me anymore." He took a step closer. "That's not true. I do need you." Annabel let out a small laugh. "Adisa, we both know you don't do relationships. Maybe I didn't before, but now I know what I want." His voice was steady. "Stay in my life. Be mine." Her eyes filled with emotion. "Are you sure?" Adisa reached for her hand, holding it tight. "I have never been more sure of anything." Annabel searched his face, then smiled softly. "Then I'm not going anywhere." Adisa exhaled, relief washing over him. He pulled her into a gentle embrace, holding onto the woman who had helped him find himself again. The night breeze blew around them, carrying away the past and leaving only the promise of a new beginning. Later that night, Adisa and Annabel walked side by side under the full moon. The quiet sound of Legos surrounded them, but for the first time in years, Adisa felt at peace. "I never thought I'd be here," he said softly, squeezing her hand. "Not after everything." Annabel smiled. "Life has a way of surprising us. Sometimes the hardest roads lead us home." Adisa stopped and turned to her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You changed me, Annabel. You didn't give up on me, even when I gave up on myself." She touched his face gently. "I saw something in you that you didn't see in yourself. You just needed someone to remind you." They stood in silence for a moment, the cool night breeze wrapping around them like a blanket. Adisa looked up at the moon, its light shining brightly above them. "Legos almost swallowed me," he murmured. "But somehow, I found my way back." Annabel leaned closer. "No, you fought your way back. And now, you have a future." He smiled, feeling something deep inside him settle. "With you by my side, I know I do." As they walked back to the house, Adisa knew this was not just an ending. It was a new beginning. Life will always test us, push us into darkness, and make us feel lost. But the real strength is in choosing to rise again. No matter how far you fall, there is always a way back. Surround yourself with people who see your worth, even when you don't. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell button for more powerful African tales that inspire and entertain. See you in the next.